We're back.
We're back. Okay. We're back. Come on, we're doing pretty good tonight.
Oh, yeah, we are.
Okay. Hey, I haven't forgot to turn this back on.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're good.
Yeah, we're good. We're good. Wow. Okay, so it's funny because so some of the news that's happening has to do with Justice for Hammarskjold, which is my big project, which I've been working on for 4 years, and I talked about it a little bit before. I monitor and report on the investigation into the plane crash that killed Secretary General Dag Hammarskjold in 1961. And one of the things that's cool is there's a documentary coming out about the crash that has new information in it. Because the thing about the Hammarskjold case was there was a lot of information, but the problem was the problem has always been getting the right people to look at it and pay attention to it. A lot of stuff was found in archives and in photos. So that was the thing for a long time. And there is now a project to try and get more government archives opened. And no surprise, the US and UK are dragging their heels about it and have been. So there's very rarely anything new in the Dag Hammarskjold case, but the documentary did find new information. And one of the things that happened in the last year or so was an issue between the United Nations team that investigates the case and the filmmakers. They had information that they didn't want to turn over because that would have kind of ruined their film. So that's really interesting. It's the sort of thing that, just must happen more and more because there's just so much research and information you can find out on your own. And so I knew that was going on, and it turns out that what they found was somebody pretty much confessing to being the pilot that shot down Hammarskjold's plane, which is just wild. That is a big deal. And so I really want to see the film. It's at Sundance. I hope it gets
Ooh.
I hope it gets more popular release.
Oh man. Yeah, you don't want to do that.
Sorry, everybody.
I should have did it. There we go.
Okay. Oh, I'm just really excited about this film. And so they also, and one of the some of the information about the Dag Hammarskjold killing, the possible information was found in the paperwork for the South African Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And that was happening in the early 90s. Somebody found information about a group called Same. This is nuts. This is real life spy stories. That's what makes this so interesting. Information about a mercenary group was found in the South African Truth and Reconciliation paperwork or whatever, and so that meant that there also would have been information in South Africa about the Hammarskjold assassination, and there was just 6 pieces of paper, and that was it. But somehow there's a connection between the people that possibly confessed to shooting down the plane, and the information that's in the paperwork of the South African Truth and Reconciliation Commission. So I hope this makes sense. The Justice for Hammarskjold it's weird. I mean, it's kind of like my own little thing, but I really hope that this documentary will get released, and I really think that eventually somebody's gonna want to talk to me about it. Okay, because I started it in 2014, and social media wasn't. It's come a long way since 2014, and Justice for Hammarskjold has moved along with it. And a big issue with the Hammarskjold case is that the plane crashing was blamed on pilot error. And that was really, really hurtful to the relatives of the pilot. You don't want to think that, like, your loved one's fucked up. Right. And that's hard. And that was just said really casually without much information. And it was blamed on, people said the pilot was tired. Well, there was a co-pilot, okay? If one pilot, so that's extremely negligent. That's the whole point. If the pilot knows that he's tired, he can pass it over to the co-pilot. And so that doesn't really make sense. And so I received some more information about the plane crash, which shows that what may have happened is the pilots did like a controlled crash, and that was how the plane crashed. They were like being shot at, and so they tried to descend. And so it was said that they did a really good job. And so I kind of need to go back and read that part of the book over again. But I just get real, because like the reason to think, because you can go on and on and on about ballistics. And at first when I got this article, I was like, oh, I don't want to post it because I don't like all these people. I don't like all these like ballistic conspiracy theories going on my Justice for Hammarskjold page, annoying me, which isn't very nice because I should. I mean, they keep it. They kind of keep it going, but they can just be kind of annoying. And I was annoyed by the article because it had such a tone of like, oh yeah, I came along and figured this out all by myself, blah blah. And I just asked my brother-in-law because he's a pilot, and I was like, fuck, so what? But the main person thought Justice for Hammarskjold thought that it was valuable research. I mean, the reasons to think that that the plane was shot down is because it's because of things that people said, and that it's because of how people acted, and reports and testimonies for what people saw and how people acted, and things that were heard, not just a bunch of like guessing games and stuff about a plane. Because then you start saying like, well, how can you possibly tell what happened with the plane 60 years ago? And it's true, you can't. There's not really that much that can be figured out. So that is news on Justice for Hammarskjold. And the plane is called, the documentary is called Cold Case Hammarskjold. And it's at Sundance. And I've just been waiting for so long to see this. It's tricky because, okay, so going back to the film You Don't Have to Ride Jim Crow, I mean, one of the things that was really difficult for him with the filmmaking is that there's only one picture. There's just this one photo of the guys that did the bus ride. So you can't... So he had to mix it up with archival footage to try and tell the story. So that's kind of tricky. It's so exciting when you can actually find archival footage and real things to look at. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Nice. Very, very nice. Okay. So, did you see Green Book?
What's Green Book?
Green Book it's about the pianist that gets driven around through Jim Crow by a white guy. It was like getting a lot of buzz too. Okay, well, the Green Book, a lot of people were talking about it. Well, some people had seen it before the You Don't Have to Ride Jim Crow, because the Green Book was a book that people had that was published like really early on, that people used for a long time. I mean, it was a directory for black people driving through Jim Crow land for safe places to stop, all of that. And so that's what the book is called, what the film is called, but unfortunately it doesn't even talk about the Green Book. So, okay. So I've been reading a biography of Thurgood Marshall. Okay, because I was going to go back. We're getting on a little roll here, talking about heroes and martyrs and all that, because Thurgood was really, really brave. I mean, he took his life in his hands, going down to defend. I mean, he was going down to try and defend people from being lynched, and facing being lynched himself. So he would be, when he was working on legal cases, like he would move. I mean, it was like he was practically undercover. He would stay at different people's houses each night, and so that nobody could catch up with him. And then, like, at some places he'd be staying like 40 miles away from where the courthouse was. And he was just a really interesting person. And I mean, one of the things I like reading about people that are not perfect, and he was not perfect. And I think that, in a way, see, heroes are more complicated than heroes aren't perfect. I mean, Bayard Rustin was a hero, and he wasn't perfect. And Thurgood Marshall was a hero, and he wasn't perfect. I think, in a way, like heroes need to make decisions, and heroes need to deal with ambiguities. And so it was interesting. One of the things with Thurgood Marshall was he didn't believe he had a hard time, or he was not a big fan of civil disobedience and sit-ins, because his whole thing was trying to get justice through the law. So it was really interesting. So he did not want to get involved with that, and he viewed some of it as really counterproductive, and kind of one of his thing was about that justice could be found through the law, so you should obey the law. And so it's interesting. So he had disagreements with other people in the civil rights movement, and he really needed to change. Things really changed for him. Like at first, when there were sit-ins at the, when people were going into stores, he was not prepared to take that as a legal case, because of the laws of private property, that people, according to the law, one way of looking at it, well, people do have a right to keep people off their property. Racist. So he had to look at things. He had to be very, very deliberate in what he did. And so the reason he took action, able to take action over restaurants because they were providing a service. So legally, people were obligated to provide a service, the same service to everybody. So not stores, but restaurants. So that was kind of interesting, and he only, like, the NAACP had to turn down cases of people that were guilty because they couldn't take that risk of having their cases overturned. And so it was just really interesting, and he had a lot of disagreements, and there were real strong disagreements and power struggles between Thurgood Marshall and Walter White, the head of the NAACP, and real power struggles. And one of the things I thought was interesting, and like, I was reading about him online, reading something, and people were saying, oh, somebody was talking about, you learned this in like 8th grade civics, that Thurgood Marshall was the first African American Supreme Court justice. I'm like, I didn't learn that, man. I didn't learn anything like that. I mean, I had such a shitty education. But okay, so that is one of the reasons that I don't really care much about young people coming to my events, because a lot of the stuff I talk about is stuff I didn't know about until recently. Like, the stuff I talk about on my radio show, stuff I've learned about in the past couple years, or stuff I learned about yesterday when I was reading stuff. So, I mean, there's just so much. I mean, it's important information for everyone, and I mean, certainly a whole lot of young people now, in this era who've gone to school, plenty of them know more about Black history than I knew. Some of them probably know more than I knew 10 years ago. I mean, I'm not going to like sell myself too short, but we're just all missing so much. There's so much information out there. And so I just want to get it out there to people, and they can talk to other people. And it's important for everyone. And I had a terrible education. So, and like, look, there was one of the things our friend Hakeem was saying, that he had one day of Black history when he was in school, and he's like a little younger than me. So, I mean, hopefully but now, I mean, we have people like age teaching in the schools now. So things have got to be better now, I think. I agree. So, wow. So we're going to be back in 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much to everybody listening. Thank you, Maurice, James, Paul. I will see you guys soon. Okay. Good night.
Come on, everybody.
Bye.
Global history.